Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Next item is approval of the minutes for September 24. Any corrections, changes, or additions? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Next item on our agenda is President Stokes' report. Teresa, could you stop sharing the agenda for me, please? Just because I can't see who's here. Hi, President Stokes. I am handing it over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try to keep my comments brief. Um, uh, just wanted to let you know that I'm not sure how much the Faculty Senate has involvement in this, but we are in the midst of a search for our next general counsel. Loretta Martinez left back in the spring for a position in California. And so we have three finalists coming in next week, and you can look at our executive search site and get the schedule for the public meetings if you have an interest in that search. The three finalists that were identified by the search committee are or have been deputy general counsels or general counsel at other higher education institutions, some with healthcare experience. So it'll be an interesting week of um, interviews. Um, so next, I wanted to also mention the athletics director search. That is ongoing. We're working with Parker Executive. Most of you know that Eddie Nunez left. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. And Dave Williams has been serving as the interim. The search committee was created, and Parker has been actively recruiting candidates. We're coming up to the point where that committee will be having initial interviews with people who are interested in being the next athletics director. So this is a search that I hope to have wrapped up by Thanksgiving. But at this stage, it's still the process of recruiting and vetting people who are interested in the position. Now, the athletics director search comes at a really interesting time for athletics. Some of you may have some real interest in what this has looked like. Many of you are certainly, I think, aware of the upheaval that has occurred in athletics with changes in conferences. And then, of course, back in near the middle of September, the Mountain West Conference itself became disrupted by the former Pac-12 conference with the two schools that were left, bringing in four at the beginning. It was four of the Mountain West Conference teams. Eventually, it was five, and so we had San Diego State, Fresno State, Boise State. Who am I leaving out? I'm leaving out somebody, and then Utah State joined. Colorado State, yes. Oh, I know why I wanted to forget that. It was such a difficult game in Colorado at Colorado State on Saturday. Maybe that's why I left them out. I was just there at their stadium and saw their little signs that said, pathway to the pack. And I thought, boy, I really wanted to tear down those signs, but I know how to be professional, so I did not do that. Anyway, so it's been an interesting time. Many of you who follow this are aware that in order to be a conference that FBS conference, a football, the FBS component, we needed to have 8 full teams. And so we now have that. We have had University of Texas, El Paso and University of Hawaii become full members of the conference. And so we are currently out looking for a football only school, another basketball school, and then we'll be thinking about strengthening the conference. But, the reality is that there's a great deal happening in athletics. And, I've been considering that, at some point we should have some type of opportunity to really have a town hall and have discussions about what the future of athletics really looks like. And it's very complicated. There's a lot that continues to change. Um, there's what's happening in Mountain West and what's happening with the Pac-12 conference that still needs to find another football school. I think I'm reminded of a few years ago when people questioned what the purpose and value of football really is, and what's happening in the landscape now is you just see football really driving the entire conversation because it has become so financially oriented. Many of you are aware, of course, of name, image, and likeness and the opportunity for athletes to be compensated. There's also, a settlement that's been worked on with the NCAA with previous, players who didn't benefit. And it was called the House settlement. So I'm always a little confused when they talk about the House settlement because we had this really great basketball player named House that it's like every time we talk about the House settlement, but that's what it's called. And, I think talking about what that means perhaps with an opportunity for faculty who are interested in understanding all of this more and talking about what that future means for University of New Mexico would be valuable. The House impact, assuming that it actually comes through and the expectation is that it would allow schools to pay up to $22 million to its student athletes. That would be the cap. But that would be separate from name, image, and likeness funds that are actually raised for that purpose. So when people talk about this, it's called revenue sharing. And we're really talking about payments to student athletes. And so many, many layers to this. But the reality is that the schools with a lot of money will pay the maximum of $22 million to some group of their student athletes. And then you can see how that is going to transform college athletics. A lot of discussion about what will happen with college football. Now there's discussion about what should happen with men's basketball. And of course, underlying some of this is our issues of Title IX, issues of what happens to Olympic sports. And so these are things we're needing to track. And I'm not pretending to have answers. I'm just wanting to, to give you just a little bit of information about what the University of New Mexico, the Mountain West Conference, schools that are not in what's called the power, I would call them the Power Four now. The Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC, what it is that, we're having to deal with. And, it is interesting the extent to which it can, end up, it is of great interest to our Board of Regents. It's of great interest to many of our donors. And so it's just one of those things that gets talked about a lot, certainly external to the university, but I suspect there are some of you who really haven't, many of you have an interest in it from a variety of perspectives. And so I appreciate that and, would welcome some opportunity to really have a deeper discussion in some other format for us to be able to, answer questions and have conversations about it. I'm sure there's something I've left out there, but I'll move on to, this is a wonderful time in many ways for the institution. There's a lot happening, to the physical plant of our campus, I would say. Our transfer center officially opened. So that was the reconfiguration of space intended to serve our transfer students. And we've been more focused on our transfer students, knowing that such a large proportion of our new students each year are transfer students. And many times transfer students are forgotten in our ecosystem. And yet I know many of you work with them in the course of your fulfilling the educational proportion of what you do. But I really hope that this transfer center will help us better serve our transfer students who sometimes are navigating a university that's much bigger than what they were accustomed to, and the complications of actually getting to that degree can loom pretty large for them. We had the groundbreaking for our Collaborative Center for Arts and Technology. It was a very windy day. Well, actually, it wasn't. It was not a windy day until we're all sitting out in a parking lot with a mound of dirt to reflect that we're going to do this. We're doing a groundbreaking. And we had wonderful performances. We had music stands. We had shovels to actually move the dirt. And then a windstorm came up. We're right there in the parking lot and Central with the traffic sounds of Central. And then everything started to blow down, blow away. We got it done. It was a great celebration. The painful part is it does take up a parking lot, but it's going to be a great facility, and it's going to go up pretty fast because the money needs to be spent, because that's how general obligation bond funding works. So I'm anxious to see what that looks like. It'll be an exciting new facility to serve our School of Arts. And we also had yesterday a groundbreaking for the what's called the Children's Psychiatric Center. That was another of the general obligation bonds that we had funded by the voters. Now, this was literally a groundbreaking because it was all dirt, no pavement. They've already cleared land for where that's going to be, but it will significantly increase our ability to serve a much needed population, children and adolescents with serious behavioral health and mental disorders that we know a whole lot more now than we did 60 years ago when we built those facilities back then. So it's a whole different ballgame to think about what belongs in a facility like that. We had a ribbon cutting for a refreshed lobby in Popejoy. We had the grand opening of something called Lobo Oasis in the Student Union Building. It's really a space that Student Affairs has developed to allow students the opportunity to go in for quiet time and sign up for it. Really just a place to calm and settle oneself. So kind of a support for student well-being. The Lobo Welcome Center officially opened its doors. So that's the old Navy ROTC on Yale, near the Yale parking garage, and just a little bit to the north of University House. And that's a fantastic place where it's a kind of the meeting point for really welcoming people and new students to the university. We had a ribbon cutting in Zimmerman for the Rodolfo Anaya Sala. So that's a wonderful facility to really reflect support and recognition of someone at the university who had such a national and international impact, served in our creative writing program and is well known. When I was starting here and asked people to give me books to read to understand New Mexico, of course, one of his books was on the list most highly recommended for me to read. And then we've got a duck pond renovation starting up in mid-November. We're trying to create a cleaner, healthier place for our ducks and others that might live in the pond. So much needed. And so that's all I can think of at the moment, but there'll be more to come in terms of facilities. We've got a GEO Bond 3 that voters will have an opportunity to vote on. And of course, voting, you can vote right now in the sub in Louis Lounge on the ground floor. So I have not had a chance to do that, but I intend to go over there and vote on Saturday. I'm really grateful to have it so convenient for, at least for me, and hopefully for some of you to be able to do that. And those GEO bonds will provide more than $230 million for higher education. And 94 and a half of that is for UNM and its branch campuses. So, consider that is on the ballot. That funding is for 52 million for the humanities and social sciences complex and 35 million for a renovation of our College of Pharmacy. Also on the ballot is a mill levy that is voted on, I think, every 8 years it's a mill levy from the county to support our hospital and intended to support the component of what our hospital does that serves the indigent populations. And so it's part of the ability of our hospital. Our hospital provides care to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. And that's really one of the wonderful missions that our hospital serves. And they don't turn people away based on ability or inability to pay. But the mill levy is an important part of the funding for UNMH. Although their budget is very, very large, people don't realize how important that approximately 100 million, it might be 9,500 million that we get from the county, how important it is to operations for UNMH. And then the Dean of Law will appreciate that I mentioned this particular amendment to you. I read it and it seems a little convoluted, but so I fear what people are going to think when they read it. What it does is it allows the Dean of Law to name a proxy to chair the judicial nominating commissions. Many people don't realize that, and I've not seen this other places. Our Dean of Law is charged with basically dealing with all of the judicial nominating commissions, and it is a massive undertaking to have that. So the ability to name a proxy if needed just helps deal with workload issues for our dean. So anyway, that's there. Those are a few things that I thought you might be interested in. This Thursday, we're going to have a second general town hall related to UNM's role in expanding healthcare in New Mexico. I don't know how many of you were able to participate in the town hall we held in the Student Union Building on October 9th, but we'll have a second one on North Campus. It'll be this Thursday from 1 to 2:30 in the Domenici Auditorium on North Campus. And really what we do is, I provide information, and then our Mike Richards and the Dean of Medicine, Patricia Finn, will talk about what this whole thing looks like. And it is a massive undertaking, but the goal is actually to really help the University of New Mexico began to close that gap in the physician shortage and healthcare workforce shortage. But also a major component of it does have to do with the need for a facility to attract and retain physicians. So, for those who have an interest in this, it's a very, very big initiative. And so this is our one of the reasons we're doing this is to give the campus an opportunity to weigh in and to find out more and to ask questions about it. And just a reminder that it's National American Indian Heritage Month. Compliance Week is November 4th through the 8th. And then, of course, we're all headed to, headed to November, which is nearly here. Stunning. We have a big event next, everyone's waiting for November 5th. No matter what your politics, no matter what, everybody is kind of ready for the next thing. So anyway, with that, I'll certainly, however you'd like to do this, Chris, you want to turn over to the provost and have questions for both of us, however you want to do it, that's fine. So I can be here.
Let's start with questions for you, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Colleagues, any questions for President Stokes? Svetlana?
Um, I would like one day to be educated in a short lecture about how contribution to sports affect the financial state of our university and all other students, because I really just don't comprehend why there is so much effort goes in and money to the sport activities. So how university benefit from that beyond sports?
That is a very that's a very good question, and something that we're often debating on our campus and on campuses everywhere. Um, I think that having a longer discussion about the pros and cons of athletics at universities is, it's certainly a national conversation, and one that we should certainly continue to have, especially as this landscape is changing so much. I think that, most there's athletics is really an auxiliary to the university, but that doesn't mean there isn't real money that goes into supporting athletics and the 400 plus student athletes that are here. There are a number of ways one can talk about this. Most would say that athletics is often the front door to the university. It's it is what alumni and others often think of. It's what binds together alumni many times. Um, but when we do surveys here in New Mexico, the first thing people think of when they think of UNM is our healthcare system, and then the second thing is our athletics programs. So, I think there have been a number of studies that have looked at the financial impact of athletics programs. They do tend to be a positive. A lot of money does come in to support athletics, and it is largely has to generate its own revenue. And it does that through a variety of means related to the sports themselves, the media contracts, the tournaments, the funding that comes through a conference. So it's really quite a interesting picture, but that picture is changing. So that it seems lengthy, but it's actually kind of a short answer for the moment. I do think that it is part of a broader conversation, and I hope that it's something that we could have. So.
Thank you, Svetlana. Ian.
Thanks, Chris. President Stokes, I'm wondering if you could say something about the state of the plans for the new humanities building. I'm sitting here in my office in the humanities building, and you can see I'm surrounded by books on all sides. I've already taken home about 10 boxes of books. Last I heard, there was no long-term storage for our books, and I'm worried that if our books are just going in boxes that are going to sit in our cubicles in the basement of parish library for several years while the new building gets built, A, that's not very safe for a lot of money worth of books, and B, there's not going to be any room for me and students to meet in my office when it's filled with boxes of books. So I don't know if there's plans to try and find some long-term storage for our books. If you've been hearing about that, I'm wondering if you have any responses to that. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate knowing about this issue, and I think you're perfect to ask the question given what I see behind you. It's really, I'm remembering my office at one time. I would actually need to seek an answer from elsewhere because I don't know for sure what those plans are. I almost hate to say I need to ask the provost because the provost may need to ask somebody else, but I think that the provost has been more involved in the specific planning related to a transition. So it looks like James has unmuted himself, so maybe he's going to jump in.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I don't have a lot to add to that specific question, but we'll find out an answer for you relating to sort of volume of materials in current offices. And from a kind of a larger perspective, of course, the GeoBond number 3, which is on the ballot, is a kind of a critical step. If that bond doesn't pass, then we'll be scratching our heads pretty hard. If that bond does pass, we still need to find another $59 million or so. And so that'll be part of the work with the legislature this year. We do have folks who are currently in humanities moving into spaces really all over campus, but a significant number into the what was the parish library, where we've moved we've moved all of the books and archives there into the remote storage facility down on South Campus. And then there are faculty and staff currently in the humanities building will be moving to some other buildings as well. So that is ongoing. On the specific question about Ian's books, I will ask the folks who are planning that and see what we learn. So stay tuned, Ian.
Thanks. No, I'm asking on behalf of
I understand.
all the people in the College of Arts and Sciences who have decades worth of books in their office and are facing the exact same issue.
Yep, understand.
Understand completely.
Any other questions for President Stokes? I'll just support President Stokes' invitation to vote in the sub, and as Liz posted in the chat, the stickers from APS students that we receive for voting are outstanding. And Liz posted her own. Here's mine with a little Lobo. I swear I didn't stuff the ballot box, but I got 2. So yeah, so get yours before it's too late. So with no more questions for President Stokes, I'll turn it over to Provost Holloway.
So, thanks, Chris. And I think it's good for the president and the provost to be aligned. So she covered about half of what I would have said, which is good. I think she missed GeoBond 2. Tell me if I'm wrong. So one of the other bonds that we don't talk about very much is General Obligation Bond 2 for public libraries. And all of the UNM libraries do receive funding through GeoBond number 2. So the university libraries, the law school library, College of Nursing library, and HISLIC. So that's another bond that's of particular interest to UNM. Let me just kind of share a few things that we're thinking about, and also some responses to the very nice list that Chris shared with me of topics that the Faculty Senate is thinking about. And so one of the first topics that was on that list, and I don't think they were necessarily ranked, but it was first item, had to do with student success. And there were a lot of discussions in particular about basically the requirements for students to retain lottery scholarships. And so the language used was the 5/5 course requirement, the idea that a student has to take 5 courses each term. And where that idea really comes from is completing in 4 years, 120 credit hours in 8 terms. That requires 30 credits every academic year, 15 credits a term, hence 5 classes at 3 credits each. And what drives that for our students in general is from a practical standpoint, is maintaining eligibility for the lottery scholarship or the opportunity scholarship. That's where that kind of notion has come from. And the reason it's there is that the not just folks in the New Mexico state government, but most state governments across the country have a very fixed notion in their minds that students should complete in 4 years. And so many states have various tools to induce either students or universities to try and drive completion in 4 years. Whether that's a good idea academically or not. And I think we know that for many of our students, that's a challenge. We have actually over the last 3-4 years worked with various folks in the legislative branch and the executive to understand some of those challenges, to show in particular that one of the major reasons students lose access to the lottery scholarship and now probably opportunity scholarship is that they can't always maintain that 15 credit hour per term load. Effective this year, the state has both changed the criteria for the opportunity and lottery scholarship and regularized them somewhat. They used to be actually annoyingly different, and they've made them more similar. So that basically for us, for students doing 4-year degrees, students don't actually have to take 15 credit hours a term. They have to take 30 credit hours in an academic year, which includes the summer. That's better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better. So our students do have new options where they don't necessarily have to take 15 credits every term, but they do have to make it up in summer. And that's the place where it still could use improvement. And so I do want to flag that, one, this is in a better place than it was. To be eligible, a student has to take 12 credit hours, get a certain grade. This is for lottery. At the branch campus is 9 credit hours for eligibility, and then maintain either 30 credits a year or 24 credits a year at the branch campuses for either opportunity or lottery. So again, I think it's better. There's still work to do there. And one of the things I've mentioned to the operations committee is, one, over time, we're going to see what these changes do. We don't really know yet, since they're new, how much this additional flexibility will help us advise students in ways that let them maintain their scholarships. We are looking at scholarship retention as one of the metrics we ought to be tracking. Very few schools track something like that, but it makes sense in New Mexico. We want to see what we can do to help students retain these opportunity and lottery scholarships. So we'll be doing that over the next several years to see do these changes help. There is, I think, work that faculty particularly can do in terms of advocating. If you got a legislator living next to you, it's worth having these conversations to keep folks sensitized to the idea that for students in New Mexico, taking 15 credit hours a term may be a really bad idea, right? For some, it's fine. But for some of our students, we know that it's too much. They have family obligations. They need a second job or whatever it may be. And so over time, we know we would like to shift this even more. So we're better off than we were a year ago, but we're probably not where we need to wind up. So I both wanted to say that there's progress there, but also we're starting to think about, this is an area where the faculty especially can be a useful voice, because you guys are teaching the students every day, right? I'm not teaching students every day, but you are. You're seeing the challenges they have with 15 credit hours. And so as we see what these changes do, and start to think about our strategy for continuing to engage the legislature around the eligibility requirements for these two scholarships, we're going to want to be looking for the best ways to engage you. But certainly in the meantime, if you're at a barbecue with the legislator, and it happens to come up, this is worth sensitizing folks to, that 15 credit hours a term is actually a very heavy load. Graduation in 4 years is not magic. It's not a race. We want success, not quick graduates. And so that's the point on student success in that kind of 5-5 question. Something else we're thinking about a lot, and I've talked to this group a little bit before, kind of the question, how big should we be? And so we're not at our biggest. Our biggest was, at our biggest, we had 28,000 students in Albuquerque. We have 22,000 roughly right now. We're not at our biggest, but we have been starting to grow. And so the question of how big we should be comes up. A related question then is, how many faculty should we have? And one of the issues that certainly came up in your discussions as a faculty senate around topics of interest was one piece of feedback said higher. I think there were 5 hires in a row. But the point was a feeling of strain around having not sufficient numbers of faculty. This, of course, varies greatly from unit to unit. But if we look overall at UNM, our student to faculty ratio is about 21 in the last report, which is the 23-24 academic year. That number is computed in a standard way. So, if you want to know how to compute it, we can point you to the website. It's a national standard for how that number is computed. It's not obvious. But let's use it as a metric. In 2012, we were at about a student to faculty ratio of 20. We stayed at that student to faculty ratio until about 2017 or so. Then it started to go down, and it went down because we were losing students faster than the number of faculty was being reduced. And so it did go down for a while, and what was really driving that was fewer students. And now it's kind of come back up to that 2021. What should the student faculty ratio be? A common number used across higher ed is that 18 is kind of a good average. 17, 18 is a number you hear a fair bit. There's no science behind that. There's no magic behind that. It's just it's actually an average that existed 15 years or so ago. But that's where that 18 number comes from. So we could ask the question, could we get to 18? And so we're looking at some questions like that. What would it take for us to have a student faculty ratio that's more like 18? Now, I'll admit that I tend to work, I'm kind of working up here. The real question would be if we're trying to grow faculty, where is that faculty growth needed? Because again, some units have really, kind of ridiculously high student to faculty ratios. Some actually are significantly lower. But we can at least look at the kind of the global question and say, okay, what should that look like? Just to put a number on it, moving our student faculty ratio from where it is now to about 18 is about a $13 to $14 million kind of resource requirement. And so that's the kind of kind of question in my head. Is that something that we can find a way to do? Is it the right thing to do? That number is very similar to the number that we need to bring faculty salaries kind of to the average level outside of the health system, where there's some different issues at play. So in any event, I just wanted you to know that that's a question we're thinking about. What should the faculty size of UNM be even today? Within this whole context of how big should our student body be overall. And again, that's kind of the way we're thinking about it in part is looking at where we've been historically and looking at national comparisons. And what we are going to actually do is we can get student faculty ratios are published nationally. And so we're going to use some of our comparison groups and see where do our peer institutions sit on those metrics and see where we sit in comparison to those. So that's at least, in terms of the question you guys raised about faculty hiring, that's where we're sitting. And one last point, always worth reminding folks that every fall we ask the deans to do a multi-year planning exercise. What is your college trying to do? Where are you trying to get to? As part of that, we expect deans to say, we think we need to do X, Y, or Z in terms of faculty hiring. And so look for those opportunities to give input to your deans in the fall and encourage this, with all your colleagues. Look for those opportunities to give input to the deans about what they might want to consider as they're building their multi-year plans. So I'll stop there and happy to take questions, which I will pitch to President Stokes.
At least not to me. So questions for Provost Holloway? Liz.
Hey, thank you so much. You mentioned, Provost Holloway, what it would cost to get to an 18-to-1 ratio, followed quickly by a comparison with what it would take to bring our faculty to to average salaries
Uh-huh.
based on peer institutions. Do you see those needed monies coming from the same place? Are they mutually exclusive? Are you suggesting a zero sum, like we
Well,
get some
no.
here and we lose other there, or what's the relationship between
Yeah,
those?
I was actually making a comparison to give us a sense of magnitudes. They're certainly not. You can't use the same pot of funds to hire new people that you use to bring salaries up. So no, I was making the comparison just to give a sense of magnitudes. And so basically, to do these things, the size of resources that we need to identify are in sort of the 15 to $30 million range to do both of those things. And so really, I was just trying to get a sense of magnitude, so that as we think about what are the ways in which we raise those kinds of resources, they're never going to come from one place. It's going to be multiple places, and they're never going to come in one year. It's going to come over time. But to have a sense of, okay, where are we trying to get to, and kind of what's the total need, that helps us think about the kinds of sources for for that level of funding and the time scale over which we might have to work to develop it. Yeah, so no, I wasn't necessarily trying to trade those against each other. And we generally haven't, by the way. We've tried to do, as we've done increases in faculty salaries, that's been separated from, to a large extent, from sources of funds for new faculty. We have actually been doing new faculty hires in most units at the same time as we're trying to do the other. Other questions?
Provost Holloway, I believe you've heard this from me before, and I know that some of my colleagues, my BIPOC colleagues, calculated a couple years back what the ratio was between or among students and faculty of color. And I'll just put in the chat here what that ratio is. So I think it's really interesting data. So if we could continue maybe not just focusing on discipline, but because a lot of times being at such a diverse institution where our student demographic is so diverse, and when a percentage of those students prefer to identify advisors or mentors who maybe come from similar backgrounds, it's just another way that we put additional pressure and responsibility on our colleagues of color. So if we could be thinking about those statistics as well, I think that would be really helpful. And, and especially in terms of when we're thinking about hiring, recruitment, retention.
Yeah, thanks for Chris. Thanks, Chris, for sharing those. But more importantly, thanks for flagging that point as well. There's a question in the chat about roughly how many faculty it would take to get to that 18 to 1 ratio. It's something over 100. I don't have a precise number with me, but it's something over 100. So it's a significant number of folks.
I'll also just share in the chat. I don't know how many of us have had a chance to read the full statement, but there's a new statement from the American Association of University Professors. It's DEI criteria and faculty evaluation. So that's also something that we within Faculty Senate and Provost Holloway, perhaps your office could spend some time looking at and seeing how that might inform our policies going forward as well.
Yeah, thanks. I just opened that link and I'm taking a quick glance at it.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Provost Holloway that President Stokes can answer? Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Oh, go
Right?
ahead.
Can I add one
Sure,
thing?
please, please.
So in the realm of voting, I hope everybody remembers that October 31st is Halloween, and you're all invited to come to Scholes Hall and vote for the best decorated or costumed area.
What's your theme?
So the overall theme for the building is music,
Okay.
and as for what the theme of each office is, you'll have to come see.
He will not reveal that. He just won't reveal that. The
He
provost
wants to
office is,
win.
they're too often the winner.
No, 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 no. Let's be clear here. Teresa's too often the winner. She's got a winning streak going. Oh, thank you all. Really appreciate your time. And Ian, we'll
Thank
get
you.
back to you.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Okay, next on our agenda, I believe, is my report. So just a few things to share with you here. There's a new faculty website that Nancy Middlebrook's office has been hard at work on, specifically Joby. I can't remember Joby's last name, Nancy.
It's Joby Elliott, and it's not new, it's just revamped.
Well, yes, it's reformatted, so I'll put the link in the chat for you if you want to take a look, and you'll find the various faculty senate committees posted there along with their rosters and their charges. Let me go back to my, okay. And also, you've heard me talk about a required training, FERPA training for faculty. I know my chair has sent out a Learning Central requirement for us. I don't know if any of you have heard from your chairs about this new training. I believe HSC faculty are probably looking at us like, what? You didn't already have a FERPA training, required FERPA training? Because I know from talking to some of you, I think your list of required trainings is maybe 14, 15 things long within Learning Central for some of you. I wanted to share with you that UNM, first of all, if you haven't met Shauna Wolf, she's the VP of Institutional Support Services. And I think from what I've learned from her and my conversations with her, I think she's been a really great hire. She only just got here towards the beginning of this year. And one of the things that is under her umbrella is sustainability on campus. And I was just interviewed by someone from UNM, well, someone that UNM has hired to do this, to interview people about sustainability on campus. And, they're trying to prioritize things. So I thought I would just share with you all. I shared with them a number of things, but I prioritized solar for all of UNM's buildings and structures, including, I'm sure those of you who drive to campus, I am lucky enough to bike, but those of you who drive, I'm sure you'd prefer to park under a shaded spot to protect the life of your car, perhaps under a solar platform. But I've also asked them to look into alternative transportation to campus. I've also brought this up to the provost in terms of how big should we get, there are all sorts of ripples that would result from that. And I think transportation to campus is another one of those ripples that would be affected. I also had a conversation with Mike Poole and Nathan, I think it was Bush. They're both in UNM's Government Relations Committee. So I asked them, what more can we faculty be doing to support encourage, promote our issues, concerns, priorities, especially with the legislators in Santa Fe. And so his office, Nathan usually, Mike's office, Nathan usually does these trainings for faculty. And so the committee, the faculty who are already on the Faculty Senate Government Relations Committee have already been made aware of the training, and I'm inviting any of you who would be interested in this training so that, you know, the issues, concerns that we've identified in our past 2 meetings, we have the training so that we can go and talk to people about these. I did mention the student success issue with Provost Holloway, which is maybe one reason why he mentioned talking to your neighbors. So if you're interested in getting learning some strategies on how to have those conversations, let me know, and I'll include you to the list of faculty who are interested in doing those trainings. Also, in regards to Shauna Wolf's shop, our Faculty Senate CDAC committee or Campus Development Advisory Council will be working more closely with the various committees that she oversees in terms of capital outlay. If you're not familiar with the term or what her office does regarding capital outlay, they have an individual request, 5-year and 10-year requests. And so each year there's an individual request. Faculty Senate Government Relations Committee used to make that request. I have moved that over to CDAC, so CDAC can focus on all things infrastructure related. And then this way, Government Relations Committee can focus on things like basic needs. The request that was made from Faculty Senate this year is in conjunction, it's the first time we did this year, is in conjunction with Staff Council. We're combining our efforts in the hopes of getting it funded. So we've asked for $500,000 to improve accessibility on campus for our colleagues, and to make campus a safer place for all and more inviting for all. So we'll let you know what comes of that request. And I'll just let you know that at the budget leadership team meeting I attended, where I have 1 vote, I'm the only faculty vote on that leadership team. But, and we usually, you know, we haven't voted on anything yet, but there was conversation. I was just going to share with you that the administration is looking into, again, recommending a 3% tuition increase for students. And of course, ultimately, it's the Board of Regents that makes that final decision. And I know the Board of Regents are concerned about the increased cost to students and faculty. And I think a lot of that pressure comes from legislators' concern about increased costs to students and faculty, excuse me, students and parents. And that the way, I've been told the way legislators have seen tuition increases in the past, they viewed it as a money grab. But at that budget leadership team meeting, as was relayed, part of the argument for that increase is the economist present at the meeting, who is a faculty member, described what students, the education students are earning now at UNM is a stunning value proposition. But as we continue to lose faculty, there's a decrease in value if our colleagues continue to leave, right? Students won't receive the same valuable education if we don't find a way to recruit and retain faculty. And I also wanted to mention a statistic that was given at that meeting. Tuition revenue is just above 2015 levels. When adjusted for inflation, it's actually down nearly 24% from 2015. And so one request that was made at that time is that was in terms of total revenue, total tuition revenue. And so those of us present also wanted them to calculate those numbers according to what enrollment was at those times. Because you just heard the provost say, I think it was around 2017 when enrollment started to go down. So it'll be important to know what those numbers are as well when figuring the difference in tuition revenue in relation to inflation and student enrollment. Okay, I think that's it for my list. Does anybody have any questions before we go to our next agenda item? Okay, so next on our list, we have an action item, the consent agenda for curricula changes and committee appointments that I believe Teresa sent out for us previously. Thank you, Teresa. Teresa, do we have a poll for that?
Yes, I can create a poll for that.
While she's working on the poll, do you need a motion and second, Chris?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do I?
Indeed you do.
I couldn't remember since it's a
Yes.
consent agenda.
Yes.
So, do we have a
it gives an
motion?
opportunity for people to pull off items on the agenda after you've had the motion?
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Any changes, additions? Hearing none, we'll move forward with voting on the consent agenda. Nancy, or actually, I need a second. Sorry.
You've got one.
Liz, thank you.
We are slowly getting votes in, but
Said 75%. We're almost there.
I think we have enough because not
Think
all,
that's
everybody
probably
is
enough.
faculty centered or yeah.
Right? Okay.
Thank you, Teresa. So 92% yes. And 8% abstaining.
Abstain,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Sure.
Okay, next on our agenda is a new Bachelor of Arts in Landscape Architecture. Do we have Dr. Harris present? Oh, yes. Hi, Dr. Harris. Thank you for being here.
Certainly, I should just correct, our terminal degree for teaching is a master's. So I have an MLA and an MFA, but no PhD. I've spent the
Oh,
same amount of time in school, just
yes.
not actually
You
produced a
know,
PhD.
I err on,
I'm grateful for the respect, but I wouldn't want to take the title from anyone who's actually.
thank you. Thank you, Professor Harris, for being here.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you all for your service and your work. And I did not present visual slides, but I do have a presentation. I think you all received our proposal for the BLA degree. I was encouraged. I'm the associate chair for the moment. I'll be interim chair next semester and then presumably full chair starting in July. But our current chair requested that I do a little bit of a song and dance about what landscape architecture is, as well as talk about the BLA itself. So forewarned is forearmed here. Landscape architects design landscapes from urban to rural. These designs connect humans, ecologies, and built forms. If you've walked on the street, played in a park, biked on an interpretive trail, or stopped to admire a view, chances are a landscape architect designed that moment for you. Landscape architecture projects mitigate effects of climate change and build a world that emit fewer greenhouse gases. From urban heat island effects to water quality, stormwater, wilderness urban interfaces, and wildfire impact mitigation, landscape architects work at many scales to make the world a better place. In designing parks and open spaces, landscape architecture addresses diverse urban populations and community-based design projects. Landscape architecture works along with allied disciplines in architecture and engineering to create equitable and beautiful spaces across the world. There are 80 international professional societies of landscape architects. Students who major in landscape architecture can have careers that focus on the advancement of New Mexico and the mitigation of climate change and environmental justice here. They can also have careers that will allow them to work across the planet. Landscape architecture as a practice aligns with the UNM 2040 plan and mission. The new UNM Bachelor's in Landscape Architecture addresses diversity in the profession. According to the US Census and the American Society of Landscape Architecture data, 6% of ASLA members identify as Hispanic or Latino, and only 0.45% of ASLA members identify as Native American or Alaskan Natives. Of New Mexico's more than 2.1 million residents, 50% identify as Hispanic or Latino, and 11% as Native American or Alaskan Native. By offering this undergraduate degree, we can change the face of this profession in Native American and Hispanic representation. The combination of the opportunity and lottery scholarships and an undergraduate program is a powerful tool to create a more diverse population of landscape architects who can affect the world. UNM teaches the only Indigenous graduate design studio in landscape architecture in the United States. We can use this new degree to build on that success for undergraduates. An undergraduate degree provides an opportunity for equity and gender representation in landscape architecture at the level of firm ownership and academic leadership. And this is a quote from the recent article published. While recent data collected by the Landscape Architectural Accreditation Board reveals a significant female presence in landscape architecture educational programs across the United States, women lag behind in career achievements such as awards, fellowships, and leadership positions. An undergraduate degree provides more time for women to have detours from their careers to raise children or care for parents and still have time to build up the equity and experience to become firm leaders and academic leaders. We have designed this new degree to be accredited once established. In New Mexico, an accredited degree in landscape architecture provides a track for BLA graduates to become licensed after passing the landscape architecture record and examination and completing just 2 years of practice with a licensed landscape architect in New Mexico. This is an opportunity for students to have good paying jobs soon after graduation. A new UNM Bachelor's in Landscape Architecture is an opportunity. We've created a strong master's degree program in landscape architecture. For 25 years, we've had an accredited MLA program, winning national and international competitions and having students employed across the discipline. We celebrated our first Distinguished Alumni Award this year at the National ASLA Conference, and our graduating class of 11 MLA students in 2024 are all employed as we speak at local firms, improving the landscapes of New Mexico. We think it's time to build on that foundation and create the opportunity for undergraduate students to receive a BLA. Over the past decade, we've had roughly 30 students at any one time in 2 different undergraduate tracks served by architecture and planning programs who take our courses and have concentrations in landscape architecture along with their main degrees. We propose this degree for those students, and for others, we intend the BLA to attract into the university. We are the only school of landscape architecture in the state. There are currently 44 accredited BLA degrees in the United States, and we can be number 45. Does anybody have any questions about our program or our proposal?
Any questions for Professor Harris? Okay, I'd like to.
I think Liz does.
Oh, Liz, thank you. Oh, she's just clapping. She's giving you props. Do I have a motion to approve the BLA in the Bachelor's of Arts in Landscape Architecture?
Motion to approve. Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Sorry. Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you, Stephanie. Let's see. Teresa, do we happen to have a poll?
I do have a poll for that.
Okay. If you could bring that up. Any discussion? Okay. Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay, we are ready.
Okay.
We're there.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share
Okay.
results. You all can see those results. Congratulations, Professor Harris. That's so exciting. Now I wanna take some classes.
And this will be forwarded on to the regents from the Faculty Senate.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
And I'll get to vote on this again. So you already have my vote.
I'm grateful.
Yes. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, next on our agenda. UNM Wayfinder website from our very own Senator and Professor Hutchison.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to try my best to share correctly. See if I can get it. How's that look?
Lovely.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it pretty? Hi,
Yes.
everybody. I'm going to do my best to stick to my 10 minutes because I know we're also running behind. And I know that some senators on the call have already, in one way or another, heard a version of this presentation. So I tried to put some surprises in there just for you. This is a project that I developed as an administrator in the Division for Equity and Inclusion over the last several years to address what is a very kind of glaring deficit in some of the resources and supports and even information available to staff and faculty about various harms that they may encounter in the workplace. We're much more systematic about our support for students, which is as it should be. But the Wayfinder is an attempt to provide a private sort of access point for information and self-referrals, essentially, for staff and faculty to find resources at UNM and in the community for support and for reporting different types of harm. Here, I'm not going to read this slide, I promise, but it is in the set of slides that are available. I've supplied them Office of the University Secretary. You can also get them directly from me. But we started by studying this problem a few years ago, doing usability studies with staff and faculty to see, when presented with hypothetical scenarios, how easy was it for them to find the answers they were looking for? And the answer was not easy, or that they were often directed to resources that were less helpful, either because they were designed only for students or because they referred exclusively to long and complicated policy texts, which I don't know about you, but when I'm in crisis, the last thing I want to do is read policy. So we moved on to developing design goals. These are developed in coordination with national experts and based in really good critical scholarship on usability and design in web applications. And the principles that we built in at the start have been consistent throughout, that the design be user-centered, that it be private, and that we also teach people about web privacy as they navigate, that it address multiple types of harm and contemplate the fact that harms are often co-occurring and very difficult to, let's say, parse in terms of complaints and reports and so forth one might make at the university. And finally, that the site should be trauma-informed in very specific ways, keeping in mind some of the cognitive load for any of us might experience in the wake of a harmful or frightening incident. The project, just so you have the scope of it, started in 2021. This is a child of the pandemic, I suppose, and was developed in coordination between DEI, our IT applications department, and with support from the Senate, as well as the DEI Lead Council and the Diversity Council, which were willing or unwilling guinea pigs for a lot of the ideas emerging in this project. After running all of the design and content of the website through campus partner offices, and by that I mean everyone from CO to the Ombuds office, as well as CARS and other really destinations that the website points to. We launched in 2023, and since then have been engaged in really trying to make people aware of this tool, and moved on this year to a stage of evaluation, which is just now getting off the ground. The point of the evaluation, of course, is to measure whether the site is actually achieving its goals and to make corrections and changes that will make it a more useful tool for people. So here, if you want to grab this QR code or log on to the development website, you can also just go to wayfinder.unm.edu. But when you do that, it makes my metrics crazy. So I'm asking you to use this website. And you can navigate this on your own. I'm not going to do a lengthy introduction, but just show you a few screenshots of the main pages so that those who haven't seen this before, have some preliminary idea. This is the homepage, which makes it pretty clear that the website is designed for UNM staff and faculty. It does contain a link to resources for students in case they wander onto this page, but it is not, the student experience is not fully supported by this site. That would be a different project or an extension of this one to address those communication needs as well. So with these main pathways for staff and faculty, because support services as well as some reporting mechanisms are distinct for staff and faculty roles. One thing that all of the pages link to is a page under Who Can I Call? I wish I could say that's a 24/7 hotline of anything that happens, but rather what you get is this list, which is differentiated by the different types of support. What's distinctive about Who Can I Call is that it foregrounds those resources on campus that are confidential. And by confidential in this context, I mean confidential insofar as those offices are not obligated to report contact from UNM employees or the nature of the contact, unless there is some, as usual, threat of imminent harm to self or others. These are protected spaces that may do de-identified reporting to upper administration, but are not obligated to report the details of those who contact them and the incidents that have occurred. But back to this homepage, if you were to go down, as I know you're all drawn in by the plant here into the faculty page, you'd find a basic layout, again, following principles of trauma-informed design, that divide sort of the areas of harm as recognized by the university into these distinct squares. And please notice that, again, in an attempt to be trauma-informed, you can click through to I'm not sure what happened, because that is often the case. I don't know what to call what just happened. It was so ridiculous, or it was so painful. And a link to, excuse me, broader workplace issues that may be challenging, may be harmful, but may or may not be linked to these other areas of 5 blocks on this page. If you click on those, you are given a brief paraphrase and set of examples, a definition of what those harms, what generally characterizes those harms, as well as a pathway to what we call the options page. And I will be done with this demo part very soon. This is really the destination, right? Insofar as once you've arrived at this page because you clicked on options for discrimination and harassment, it presents the user with 2 columns. On the left, places for information and support. And on the right, I really do want to report this. And if you go to the what should I expect bars here, those are called accordions. I learned some language in the process of building this, and they will open up, as in this example of the Ombud services, to try to give the user some sense of when you contact this office, what they can and can't provide. Because one of the areas of harm that people experience is in looking for support, they're sometimes asked to tell their story many different times to many different offices. And I don't know if any of you have been shuttled around, but it's not a pleasant experience. So this page is built to provide people with information to make the best choices that they can about where they want to start or which offices they might want to approach. Now notice Ombud Services has a relatively short set of things to expect. Try to dive into CO and it gets pretty complicated, right? There is a long list of what they do and don't do, in part because that office is in charge of so many different kinds of processes. But this is just an example of the kind of information that's available on the page. And I'd like to conclude my time with just a sense of the outreach we've been doing since we launched in 2023 with support. I have a nice lift from the president, as well as the evaluation project that's currently underway. And again, if evaluation is something that interests you, I'm really happy to answer questions. And here, what I'm going to do in the interest of time, is skip to the ask. What am I asking of the Senate? Why am I back here? I'm asking you to mention the site to people, wayfinder.unm.edu, if you think that it can be useful to them. Call me in for a longer presentation or a demo, or I can show you those statistics if you really want to see the metrics. And this is something I do regularly for different units on campus. Happy to do it. Please tell those in supervisory positions about the Wayfinder. They are mandatory reporters of all kinds of harm, which means they are not confidential. And most of us are not confidential on certain issues either. So the Wayfinder can be a really important resource if someone approaches them with an issue but wants it to be private, right? So it's really important to be able to direct them to the right resources. Finally, feel free to drop questions in the chat or to write me at ehutch. And I think that is the end. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Liz. First, thank you both for your presentation, your reminder, but also for putting so much time and labor and energy into this, because it's such a incredible project. It's such a great way to support faculty and staff. I just can't even imagine how much research went into it, and not to mention learning how to create accordions and, providing input on the design of such an important tool.
Hey, it literally took a village, so I'm not going to take all the credit for that. We've got some great IT people and lots of testers out there who helped us develop it.
Well, I appreciate you leading the charge.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Liz? And please,
There's a question in the chat, Chris.
oh,
Sorry.
great.
Okay. Natalie, thank you for the question. What's the difference, if any, between confidential and anonymous reporting? I'm not sure I can answer the question as posed. I don't know, Natalie, if you want to add something to it. There is literally no such thing as it's
Go ahead.
difficult for me to conceive of confidential reporting because those two are in conflict, right? Reporting is the act of notifying the institution about a problem, right? And confidentiality is something managed at an administrative level to allow certain practitioners on campus, like the Ombuds office, like the advocates at the Women's Resource Center. And of course, there are other confidential spaces on campus, especially health professionals, counselors, folks with professional exemption from the obligation to report. So those are what we call the confidential resources across the campus, and it's a combination of different roles. And fortunately, there's a whole page on the Wayfinder, which is more articulate than I am about explaining that. But you can engage in anonymous reporting through the Ethics Point website, which is a third-party platform used by the university. It's both a hotline and a reporting website that allows you to file reports and indicate the category, the time, the date it occurred, and remain anonymous to the website and the people who use the Ethics Point information. The important thing to know about Ethics Point is that information that is turned in there will be triaged to different offices with scope and jurisdiction over a particular issue. And depending on the severity of the issue, something might be investigated because of a report, even if you remain anonymous. So there can be a trigger there, which would not exist in a confidential space, okay? Finally, Ethics Point is particularly useful because if you file a report anonymously, you will be given a key, like 10 digits or whatever, you can use in going back to the site and seeing if there are any updates or reports back, at which point you can also decide to give your name, right? There are always options to go from anonymous to known. So that's the only way I can answer that question, is kind of by hacking it into two answers. Yeah. Yes.
She knows her stuff. Okay. Well, thank you, Liz, so much again, for bringing this resource to our attention. I think we should do this every year, just as a really good reminder.
Only if you let people go have snacks and turn off their camera after the first time they hear it, okay?
Okay, fine.
All right. Thank you
There
for
might
your
be
time in
there
the
might
Senate,
be
folks.
there might be people snacking right now.
Hey, I hope
What
so.
do I know?
I hope they're playing online while I talk. It's great.
Okay, Natalie. Natalie might be snacking as we speak. Okay, next on our agenda is public comment. Teresa, do we have any public comments?
None at this time, unless there is someone who has any additional comments.
Okay, thank you. So additionally on our agenda, we have discussion of Faculty Senate priorities. So I want to show you this response. First of all, I want to thank all of you who responded to the survey I sent out asking you to choose a priority that you were most interested in working on with your colleagues. So I'm going to share the graph that was generated based on your responses. The response rate was, I'm pleased with the response rate. It was 29 senators responded, which is, I believe, over 50%, right, Nancy? Which for a
Our quorum
survey.
is 40%, which is 25 people, so that's pretty
So,
good.
see, that's really, yeah, that's
Got
pretty
a
good.
quorum
There's-
response over.
Yeah, I think 26% for a survey is good. Yeah, Liz says that's got to be a record. So I'm going to share this with you. So you can see here, we had quite a few, so, you know, you can see here, obviously on the left, the issue or concern, and then how many people responded that that was the priority that they were interested in working with. I was hoping, and the group who responded to this, you all can decide, of course, but for the purposes of today's discussion, so campus safety, 2 people responded, and then for parking and transportation, 1 person responded. And so for today's discussion, I was going to combine safety and parking and transportation, but of course, those of you who meet within that group can decide whether you want to keep those separated or not. And then these 2 were basically more, they weren't necessarily identifying a topic, but just communicating something to me. So what I have done for the rest of our meeting is set up breakout rooms according to each one of these issues. Those of you who didn't have a chance to respond to the survey, you are obviously welcome to choose a room and join that room. So if I have set up these breakout rooms correctly, I'm going to open the rooms and you will be able to independently join whichever one you want on your own. Choose it yourself. And what I would like to recommend we do during this time is, here, I'll put it in the chat. That might be easier. So obviously introduce yourselves. I'd recommend exchanging contact information such as email and sort of come up with a tentative game plan on what next steps would be. So for example, that could include nominating or identifying a chair for your subcommittee. Sorry, my husband is out riding and he keeps calling. Identifying a chair, for example, and talking through what your goals are, what goals you might have for the group. Okay. Any questions before I open the rooms? Okay, so let's see if this will work.
So are you there?
I'm here.
Are we just supposed to send you some notes?
I was just waiting till there's still quite a few people in the breakout room. They have a few more seconds.
But we're not going to have time to summarize, right?
We're not going to have time to summarize now.
So I can send you some notes.
Oh, yes, sir. If you need to, yes, if you're,
That's all I'm checking.
you need, yes,
Okay, very good.
yes. Okay, I think we've got most people back. So thank you all for joining a group, and I did take screenshots of who was in which groups. And of course, not everybody who answered the survey is here. And I wanted to also run it by you all. Your thoughts on if you wanted me to send out a message to all FACs so we can invite additional faculty to join you in your efforts, or if you think you have enough people, or how you want to do it. So I would ask that one of you for your group forward me any information that you want to share with me. Otherwise, I can, since I took screenshots, I can reach out to you as a group and ask you about next steps. So I'm proposing two things to you. So let me make it, let's do this. If one person from your group could reach out to me and let me know what your next steps are. And if I don't hear from a particular group, then I'll reach out to that group. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions? Anything before let you go?
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Before we do that, just 1 second, and I will make that motion. My opinion is that it would be good to send it to all FAC and get more people.
Okay.
We started with 3, we got a 4th, and it got even more rich in many ways. That's just my opinion, but
okay. I'll ask each group. I saw Melissa moved to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Melissa, and Sever seconds. Okay, I'll be in touch, or you can also be in touch with me, but I will definitely be in touch with you if I don't hear from you. Thank you all. Have a good evening.